Hey, so I think I'm ready to roll when you are.
All righty, let's roll. Let me fire this up. Hmm, You need to move your tail. You're in the way. Yeah. Try not to hit anything, okay? Here. Now you stay there. I'm moving that so you can't step on anything. Goofball. Cats. They are crazy. All right. Dogs are easier. They tend to listen better than cats. Here we go. How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? Well, you get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use a scientific method, and that, my friends, is guaranteed to make you a smarter fantasy football player because it's just using statistics in a smarter way and in a statistic based game like fantasy football that will give you an edge. And joining me as he does each and every week, twice a week during the regular season, it's the professor himself. It's John Bush. John, what a crazy season we are having in fantasy football, but I'm pretty sure we say that about this time every year.
Yeah, I don't know the metrics. Uh, it hadn't looked at them on all that to really know. We're kind of so deep in that it's hard to take a view of the system of the landscape. So I don't know. A lot of moving pieces this week, a lot of questionable players. Ramondre Stevenson was declared out yesterday, so I was moving pieces around. That's kind of where I'm at this point, is just making sure I've got bodies to fill in spots.
And and that has been the fight this that has been the fight this year is finding those bodies to fill. But and again, I haven't done the metrics on this, but it just feels like we're getting more of these early out declarations than I can remember, certainly more than we used to get years ago. It's just a different way that they have to put the data in now for the NFL because so many teams are playing that everybody's questionable game. And now they're making the teams have a little bit more, I should say, truth to their injury report. And as a result, we're getting more of these early declarations of out than I can ever remember. The last couple of years, it is definitely increasing.
Yeah, and but you still got things like CMC,
Oh, yeah.
where that declaration of truth is or lack of. So I don't know if it's completely to that point. I don't know. Maybe we need chips on all the players and we can, monitor the heart rates and blood pressure and things and get really intrusive. Until that happens, I guess we're left kind of guessing and wondering and trying to decode coach speak and player speak, and it's uh, it's been that kind of season. Part of my workaround or dealing with it is I have to fight the tendency I want to win in every league I play.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that pressure, and you're doubling down, you're thinking, you're you're wandering this way, you're wandering that. The focus, the juggling of everything, and the focus with trying to live life on top of all that. It's quite interesting. 40 something leagues is a lot to say the grace over, and I'm still every week I'm wondering. Uh, every day I'm going through and looking at my lineups and thinking and probably overthinking.
And that actually brings me to my gripe of the week, because my gripe of the week has to do with me and horrible, horrible management decisions that I made for our dynasty team. But I think it's a great illustration to talk about this for folks that are, especially folks that are getting new into dynasty. So I'm always used to having dynasty leagues where there's a taxi squad. So you can grab a lot of what I call speculative picks, and you can park them on a taxi squad. And that way you don't have to worry about your regular roster being filled with a lot of these speculative picks. In FPPC, we don't have the luxury of that. All we have are 3 IR spots, and that's it. So if a player isn't put on the IR, there's nowhere to protect him unless you think, oh, I can drop him and then pick him up another week. And with all of the injury situations that we've been dealing with at running back, and the fact that we came into the season with a pretty thin roster of running backs, how about this for guys that we drafted this year? So we grabbed Audric Esteem from Denver, who's been on IR, but is starting to practice now and should get an opportunity there. Bucky Irving, taking over as the starter for Tampa. Isaac Guerrero, who we saw a great run from on Thursday Night Football. A lot of upside to that guy. Tyrone Tracy, another guy with a lot of upside. And Dylan Laub from Las Vegas, who really hasn't done much. And then Rashid Ali, who's also been on the injured list. So we've had the chance to protect him. And how about Eric All, the talented tight end for Cincinnati? Only one problem, Professor.
Yeah.
I cut a lot of those players because in FPPC, you have to plan ahead. There's no free agency. So you can't just pick up a player when things are obvious. You have to plan in advance. So sometimes you need to grab 2 running backs that might be starting. And by doing that, I thought because the rookies weren't doing anything, that I could drop a rookie and pick them back up when things were a little more certain. Well, we're playing against some pretty good sharks over in FPPC. That's the other difference, is not having a realization that the folks that are playing for money over at FPPC, whether it's redraft, whether it's dynasty leagues, whether it's best ball, I think they're a little better at playing fantasy football than a lot of the competition that I usually face on Sleeper, because I've been able to get away with dropping a guy during a bye week and picking him back up, or letting him, fading him one week and then grabbing him again when it becomes more obvious that that player is got a role on the team. And then it's just a matter of him being the next man up and the injury happening, and he's already squirreled away on my bench. Not at FPPC. Man, these guys are sharks. Every move that I've made this year, I have cost us for the future because I've been so worried about winning that week. And that is a big mistake in Dynasty. Sometimes in Dynasty fantasy football, you have to allow a 2-year build and go back. But we were successful last season. We won some money in that league. We finished 3rd. I was happy with that. I figured if we added one or two running backs this year, would be golden. And I didn't have the patience for some of the rookies. And Garendo's going to be the pick that's going to end up haunting me. I can see it happening already. And my logic was Mason's the starter and CMC's coming back soon. So if we even lose him, well, where is he going to fit in? Where is he going to have the role? Same with Tracy. It was like, well, the Giants are not all that great anyway. And we need a starter for this week. Now, the only consolation, Professor, is that we won those 2 weeks where I played Patch and Phil at running back. So
Yeah.
we're in contention for the playoffs. We will make the playoffs. I'm almost guaranteeing that at this point. But our future is not as bright because I dared to get too cute with our running back. So that is my lesson to everybody. Sometimes just take the loss and go on and wait for those rookies to emerge. Use some of your veteran players as the pawns that you get rid of. But the way our injuries were happening at wide receiver, losing Devonta Smith, losing Kupp, losing our quarterback, so Waddle had to be, a questionable starting player. It led to some bad decisions. But once again, live and learn. It's my first dynasty league where I played without a taxi squad. I only have one other one like that. And in my other non-taxi squad league, I got 6 guys. Out of a 20-man roster, I got 6 guys on IR right now, and I have no IR spots. But I've kept them because they're good players, and I've just figured, well, this is not going to be my year. But I'm hoping next year I have a little better health and we go back. But the moral of the story, Professor, is think about the rules and work your waiver wire according to the competition you're playing, and also to not just worrying about winning this week, but looking down the road with talented players. I let some good guys get away.
Uh, I since I don't do dynasty well, I've had one team and you took it over. It's hard for me to really jump in and critique your play. I mean, I I never even won any money when I was running it, so I can't complain. It was a good season, and I think injuries and things have just landed on this team. I just scanned it, and if Cup and if Tua can ever come back and resurrect Waddle, I mean, we'll be stronger.
Oh yeah.
And you know,
Yeah, we'll have a
yeah,
good team here. And
yeah,
and the reality is Aaron Jones might miss time. That makes Ty Chandler more valuable going forward.
hmm,
Uh, Madison is the guy in Vegas. We were right about that. We were right. Bucky Irving wasn't going anywhere off the roster,
yeah.
and he ended up being good. And Chuba Hubbard's a guy that I picked up off the waivers last year. So those are our 2 starters right now, and that's working out really well. Grab Justice Hill, and probably that's the guy that I should have not worried about grabbing. But we're in a situation where we're patching and filling with Cup out, Waddle having concerns, and oh my goodness, it got ugly there for a while. We were missing Devonta Smith, and we played the patch and fill game. Higgins was out too. So we played the patch and fill game. It'll probably pay off that we will solidify our spot in the playoffs versus maybe if I play it cute and try to hang on to the rookies, we might not be. But sometimes in
Here, I
dynasty,
thought since we're recording
yeah,
this that
yeah,
we can look at the team here.
yeah.
We're what
And
about in seventh place? So six go to the playoffs. Uh, we have Stroud, Hubbard, Bucky Irwin, Smith, Lamb. Ertz looks like until Cup, Hawkinson
Hawkinson.
comes back, so that we could get a boost there. Ertz has been serviceable, and he was cheap to get, right? You didn't have him. Did we have
No,
him before, or you
no.
picked him up?
Waiver pick.
There's Hill, Higgins, uh, kicker, defense. So, really, and you do have Estime. I don't know about Jelani Woods, Dennis. If I had to critique anything, that would be my biggest question mark of this. Everything else seems, uh,
And if we needed a third IR, let's
mm,
say let's say Cup had been put on IR,
mhm.
I would have dropped
But what
Jelani
I'm
Woods.
saying is, I don't know what's out there.
Oh, it's pretty lean right now. It's pretty lean when it comes to running back right now. There really aren't a lot of guys that you can look at and say, oh, there's a guy who's going to be
So,
a plug and play.
yeah, I'm looking. Uh, yeah, it's thin. You'd have to, uh, in other words, I'm looking for our slot here. Uh, Thielen's still there. That's something. Uh, Demarcus Robinson. But I think you could trade. I don't know with the. Uh, I think you'd have to drop Woods for. I don't know how it is in the. Uh,
Well, what we could do actually is because we're streaming defenses anyway,
mhm,
next week I could put in a bid for Thielen
mhm.
and drop our defense,
And then
then put Thielen on IR
yeah, and
and
then
drop
you'd have.
Jelani Woods, and then I'd have the availability to pick up a defense by Sunday morning that we
Mhm,
could play. So there's options there that we could make a move. Zay
mhm.
Jones is also out there, but wide receiver isn't our problem. Our problem is running backs. It's always been running backs, and
Yeah.
the running back roster right now is pretty thin. We've had Edwards on our team. We've had Dylan Lobb on our team,
Mhm,
and we've thrown both of them back because they haven't been active yet. Um, we even had Dalvin Cook on the team earlier this
mhm,
year and used him as a roster spot. But the mistake that I made was Garendo that and Tracy. Those are the two guys that you draft well, and I should have held on to them. I should have kept all on the roster. I think he
mhm.
might end up being quite the talent, but Ertz has been producing as well as all. So it worked out at tight end. It's worked out at running back. And I'm probably my worst critic when it comes to management. I just hate being right on players in the draft
Mhm.
and then being wrong on who you hang on to. But what we'll do is what we did last year, and we'll
So
pick
you
up.
like Slayton? I see you got him picked.
Yeah, yeah. Darius Slayton, I plugged in there just in case. We want to play him because Waddle is on bye this week, and of course Cup on bye and Whittington on bye, and I figured we could plug him in for Justice Hill if we needed to, for that starting spot. Um, and
Mhm.
if Mixon doesn't play though, I've got Ogunabowale and Akers, and I'm not sure which one of the two will be the starter this week. And it's very possible it could be Damian Pierce, it could be the guy we don't have. So
Yeah.
those are the roster spots that we'll eventually do something with. If Mixon comes back healthy, there's no need to keep both. Chandler will stay, Madison will stay, and
Mhm.
our two starters will stay, of course. But yeah, I played a little too much patch and fill. Now, if Cup had been put on IR, the way they would have normally done with him, that
Hmm.
would have solved a lot of our problems. But
Hmm.
without him on IR, we had to make some decisions. And when a Steam comes off of IR, we'll probably have to get rid of either Akers or Agunabowale, which is fine with me. Neither one is a long-term solution. Both are just Akers got us 10 points one week and 7 points the other week. So
Hmm.
it was better than taking a zero. It was better than getting a 3 point week, and it helped us win 2 weeks. Really like Whittington. Added him to our wide receiver roster there.
Hmm.
And once we get by the bye weeks and we get Cup back healthy, though, we don't need those extra wide
So
receivers. So
you're getting rid of Boyd for Slayton because you think we need something for
for
Justice
this week,
Hill.
just for this week, yeah, yeah, that's
So
that's my gut saying it would be good to probably have a plug and play this week that we can
uh
count on.
Gersecki might be another choice. He's there's only been two tight ends that have had three good scoring weeks, Bowers and Gersecki. He would be somebody you might, I mean, it's not the greatest matchup, but it's not the worst either. That I'm just saying that's another one. There are people, and I don't know where I'm at, but there are people speculating Schultz is going to be the beneficiary of Collins being out, and his supposedly his uptick is going to go. That would be another one. I mean, since we have Stroud, that might be a sneaky stack there. So those may be something. I just not sure on Slayton, I guess is where I'm coming back to. If you need
Yeah,
some, that would be, I would probably look at those guys as well with this. I mean, we got till Sunday morning to figure this out, but uh, given Ertz and that would be my feeling is maybe uh, I just don't know if Gersecki or Schultz. I mean, everything's a gamble at this point. I mean, Boyd is not a valuable piece like we hoped he might be. Tennessee has been sad, and so that may be something, Dennis, to think about too. So,
yeah. Dalton Schultz was the guy that I was thinking about, and the idea was until Hawkinson comes back, it's not a bad idea to have a
mhm,
second tight end that
mhm.
we can count on,
Yeah. Well, they're
on the roster.
good for questionable players. I'm actually in some of my leagues. I've got a few tight ends that worst case scenario, if Mixon or Brian Robinson or somebody doesn't go, I've got a tight end that I could shoehorn in. I've got Theo Johnson with the Giants if that kind of thing. So I've been doing that more than I've wanted to this year because of that. I've been the only reason tight ends have any kind of shot to get you 10 points is it's a tight end premium. So if you
Yes.
get lucky, you can get 10 and it hadn't. So I'm not fighting for like, oh, I'm going to get 20, 30 points. I'm just kind of, okay, I need 10, that kind of thing. So that may be something to think about. And a gamble would be Schultz. Grosecki he's safe. Schultz is a higher ceiling
Yeah, and
versus Slate. Yeah.
Schultz last year
Mm-hmm.
had quite a few with Dell out. He
Mm-hmm.
and with no Diggs on the roster,
Mm-hmm.
he actually had quite a few games over the last 2 years that
Mm-hmm.
were well over 10 points, even in a non-tight end premium. So not in a tight end premium, he was getting 5 or 6 catches.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a 14-point plus game that he
Right.
was having. And now without Nico Collins in there and
Mhm.
with Tank Dell, maybe not 100%, that
Mhm.
might really put, I think I'm going to put in a Schultz bid this week, just a small one.
Mhm.
Put him ahead of Slayton. But I think that's a good call because it's nice to have that the backup plan at tight end because Ertz ain't getting any younger either. And it'll be a few more weeks until Hawkinson's back. And I do like having those two tight ends. And for folks that are looking at the roster and saying, you guys have a one quarterback league and you got three solid starters at quarterback, the idea was to trade Anthony Richardson this year, but he just hasn't gotten off to a good enough start. I was hoping that Richardson would start like he was on fire and just have a couple, three great weeks. And then I would try to trade him for a starting running back in a second round pick or something that looked like it was a great deal for the opposing team, but was helping our roster.
Mhm.
And I can't do anything with Goff because both of our other quarterbacks that we would have on the roster, have a bye week on week 14, and there really isn't much to pick up on waivers. So my game plan was to deal Richardson, and then he got hurt, and he was really just not, the guy that people thought he would be this year.
Right.
So that's kind of where we are with that. But I do like having the options at quarterback, and having Goff is kind of that safety valve at quarterback. But right now we're not starting anybody but Stroud almost every week, unless the
Mhm.
matchup is in the favor of Goff at home. But anyway, that was kind of my self gripe this week. But I'm glad we went over the team because it does catch I think two minds looking at a team,
Mhm.
catches some options
Mhm.
that you can use. And I don't play as much tight end premium as you do. And
Mhm.
sometimes that level of expertise is there. But
Yeah.
I'm
So
I'm
just to go circle back, the reason I've been having extra tight ends, sometimes carrying three, Dennis, is the injuries. It gives you a flexibility to
yes.
ride a questionable player, and if they flop, then you take your tight end and say, okay, you know, I've I took a gamble of a higher upside RB or WR. They're questionable. They're not going. The tight end, you hope you get the floor. So you're not hurting as bad. Versus if you didn't have that, then you're like having to take a sub player that, at the 1 o'clock and you've got a night game or a Monday. So you're just not in the best of positions. So that's been what I've found in some of my my 41 leagues to do this year
And I'm
so far.
No, that's a good strategy, and I feel pretty good going into this week because we don't really have any injury con- concerns at wide receiver. So our starting three wide receivers are going to be in the game. We
Yes.
know, Devonta Smith, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, they are automatic starts. I don't care about matchups. I don't care about anything. They're going to
Mhm.
be in the starting lineup. And when Cup is healthy, he's the other guy. But we have the luxury of having Cup and Waddle
Mhm.
so we've always have four really good wide receivers. This is the only week that I'm looking for some flex insurance
Yeah.
and did put in that bid for Mr. Dalton Schultz. So we'll take care of that here and probably have him in our flex spot this week. Well, Professor, you have been working on some amazing secret sauce, and we got to see that for Thursday night football for the first time. I
Mhm.
was really pleased with how your offensive metrics combined with the DAPS.
Mhm.
First time out of the box, and it seemed to really show a big edge to San Francisco, and they certainly had the edge on Thursday night.
Yeah, it was for me. I had a lot of question about should I play Lockett or not. Uh, I picked up Noah Fant in a few leagues. Didn't play him, but you know, I think it was as usual. It I could have played Fant, but you just you can't call everything. Uh, but I think if you look back at the snaps and some of the other stuff, Fant was viable, and I'd
Oh
actually
yeah.
picked him up this week. So, but Lockett was he's kind of back to this spikiness because of JSN.
Yes.
That's what I've seen happen this year. I think last year Lockett was a lot more steady because JSN wasn't coming on, but
No.
now, so that's he's kind of almost flipped back to uh, that spiky best ball type player, and uh, I had to use him in like two leagues. I wasn't happy. I got a little bit of points, but I always want more.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with how I used that data and
Hmm.
how I played on Thursday night.
Hmm.
So I had my shares of Debo all in action, and I was actually considering, eh, fading a few of those in some of my leagues where I've really got a lot of talent. But I played all my Debo this week. Very happy with that. Played my Jordan Mason. Injuries happen. You
Hmm.
cannot, and he still got you some points before he went out of the game.
Hmm.
Was playing my Brandon Ayuk shares again for the second straight week. He did not have a big game. Had
Yep.
every bit of George Kittle in the lineup as I could, and also had all my Brock Purdy shares in action. So I was very happy on that. On the Seattle side, I had Kenny Walker out there.
Yep.
I had Gino in the leagues that I had to play Gino because of other quarterbacks out on buys. So I reluctantly played Gino, and he was okay. Um, did not do the play them both at running back this week. Only Kenny Walker. I did not play Charbonnet because of the way that matchup looked.
Mhm.
And Kenny Walker got points in the receiving game, which has been a big change here over the last few weeks. I don't have any Lockett in play right now except in best ball, so I didn't have to worry about that as a decision. Um, I actually benched a few of my DK Metcalf shares because I was worried about his being able to produce consistently. I had a couple of Noah Fant shares in action in my deep leagues where I had guys out on bye or played two tight ends. So I was happy with that. And I had one of my JSN shares out of three in
Mhm.
action. So I where I had some other options, I looked away from the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm happy that I did so. It was, I think, a smart use of the data.
Mhm.
And you just, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to get beat some places. Kenneth Walker's MVP index is high enough that he never sits on the bench for me. Um, it's just he's too good of a player. He's too proven. I don't really care about the matchups in his case, but the rest of the guys, occasionally I make some moves away from them, um, and because I'm where I have DK Metcalf, I have some really deep wide receiver rooms. So I have the luxury of occasionally sitting him when I don't like the matchup. And he can be a spiky player on you as well. So just kind of interesting
Yeah, and
how
we'll
you use
circle
that
back
data.
to that here in just a second. Dennis, I did want to highlight. your article that just came out today, consensus weekly value metric after week 5. And so I think this is an interesting article for people to I guess it's repetitiveness as a professor. Students should take notes, look through them, walk away, come back, look through it. This is the kind of article probably I would look at tonight, folks, and then early tomorrow morning, scan back through it, and then just then go to your lineups. Then I don't know if some of you have waiver wires, at will. Good for you. We have to make our decision, I think, at 9 o'clock Sunday. So it gets really tricky with these London uh,
Oh,
games and trying to figure all that out. There's a few questionable players here in London. So anyway, that's how I would. So the professor's homework assignment is for you to look at this tonight and then tomorrow. And some of these articles is is more for reference and just repetitiveness. Just keep it going. And so Dennis has knocked out what you need in a little, like in a nutshell sentence, gives you what you need. If you've got any questions or trades or anything, I would use this as a reference. So that's how I would use your stuff, Dennis. I'll give you a chance, but just give an example, folks. He hits you hard with a nugget of what he's thinking and what the metrics has showed on each of the players here and the different positions. So it's just more of a primer, but you need to go over it tonight before you go out and party all night and, you know, booze it up. Just go through, scan. I'd print it out and get you some color markers and just kind of mark a few things. And then, I'd get a binder. I'd print this out, Dennis. And then a few weeks, something, you'll have something like this coming out. People can kind of see where it all ended up. But you need to see, does this help you as well? So, Dennis, what were you thinking when you did this article?
so like everything that I do, Professor, it's because of curiosity that I
Yeah.
have. And it's trying to relate where players are. And so in the past few years, I've taken my weekly values, which have been proven effective, and I've taken my MVP. And more so with the weekly values, I've weighted them for the current season. So as the weeks go by, I sample more from the current year each and every week. So after 5 weeks, for instance, every player that gets rated with my weekly value, they get 2 of their games from this season. If they played all 5 games, 2 of these games are now active in their ranking. So what it does is it doesn't let 5 data points totally skew the data set, but it uses about a third of this year's games played, full games played. So if a guy came off the bench for a couple of games, he doesn't get counted as far as needing to sample those games. It's only when he's in there as a starter or plays enough of the snaps. And so what it does is it just waits for the current season in both weekly values. And then I also use the MVP metric, which adds in this season. So the more weeks we have, the more that MVP data affects the outcome of the overall data. So that's the back class, though. That's what a player has done. And then the other 2 dynamics that I'm using, one is independent of injuries. Actually, both are independent of injuries, but it's two different ways to look at the data. One is using the best index, where I look at just the positive games, just the games that ended up on your best ball score sheet. How many times did that player affect your team? Did he help you really win, or did he just keep you in the matchup? Those metrics, that metric and the MVP index, which is a look at all three things that a player can do. Did he help you win? Did he cause you to lose? Or did he just keep you in the matchup? Both of those are done just exclusively for the number of games that are played this year. So they're very, very uh, vulnerable to change. One big game by a player can move him way up the rankings. One really bad game can move him really down the rankings. But when you use all four metrics combined, it kind of dampens out the effect of any one metric. And yes, sometimes backlash shows too much. Austin Eckler is still showing up in the top 10, even though he's coming off the bench now. But Austin Eckler has been a remarkably good flex play for you all season because he's kept you in that game. He's scored around 10 points, PPR points now. I'm only grading versus a full PPR. And because that's what I play most of. And I only have so much time to do this stuff. So I look at the stuff that's going to help me. But what I found is going through the rankings every week like this, it lets me know the rising and falling players. And the risers are the guys that I want to pay attention to because all of a sudden they're getting the volume. And so my little one-liner for each
Yeah.
player is sort of my analysis of why they are where they are. And for instance, Joe Burrow is the number one quarterback in fantasy football, for this season. At the beginning, and I don't care about year-end points, okay? I don't care about total points. I'm saying he's had the most effect, the most weeks of a positive effect on your fantasy football team before the season started. My only concerns with Joe Burrow were whether his wide receivers are going to show up for work or not. I knew that if they showed up, if Chase and Higgins showed up to play, that Burrow is one of the guys I really like this year. And it had to do some with Burrow being a great player and having a good offense, but it had to do with the Bengals defense being awful. Like they're giving up a ton of points. So he has to score early and often in order to. This is like Mahomes was about 4 years ago, where the defense for the Chiefs was giving up a lot of points and a lot of yards. And the only way the Chiefs could win the game was to put 35, 40 points on the board. And it was going to be in a hurry, and it was going to be Mahomes doing it. That's what Burrow has to deal with right now. So I try to give folks a reasoning of why a player is where he is, whether he's rising or falling, if I think that's important, and any little tidbit about the player. And again, not meant to be all inclusive, not meant to give you a whole paragraph to read, just a quick take as I'm going through the rankings. And what this has done for me, Professor, is it's given me attention to the players that in a smaller roster redraft league that I don't feel I can count on right now. And that is very powerful information. And right now, for instance, I mean, another classic guy is Mahomes. He's ranked 8th right now, and everybody says, oh, he's not having the 8th best season. No, this is a prediction of what he should be going forward. Right now, using the two metrics from just this season, how about 17th and 19th? Ugh, that's awful. But he has the back class to suggest that he's going to be better than that going forward. And same with Jalen Hurts. He's number 7. His metrics on the season, this season alone, 15th and 18th. of the two metrics. So it just shows you that back class can have an effect and can raise you up. But the reason that the back class is there is just like it is in horse racing. If I've got a struggling horse who's dropping in class, he's probably going to race back to that back class sooner rather than later. And the same thing is true in fantasy football as well. Whether it's positive back class or negative back class, we tend to see the players in fantasy football go back to what they were. And so that's why how the metrics are devised, but the little one liner gives you an idea of who's moving where. And it's just been kind of an interesting uh, process for me to go through. It has made me smarter as I go to set my lineups. And as a result, I figured I would share it with the class.
I think that's good. Again, just take notes, folks. Print it out. Get your magic markers here. See what you think. Dennis has it laid out. If you're doing trades or flex decisions, these could be in a super flex. His quarterbacks stuff at the bottom here looks like you've got some opportunity to move players in and out based on this. So that's how I would use it. For me, it's just kind of just jauntily move through and just kind of okay, yeah, yeah, and uh, what I like to add to this, and not only my snaps, but this I put out today, Dennis, the scoring, and I did a little video people can just see, but I like the team concept to look in the team, and this is PPR scoring per snap data, and instead of highlighting all the weeks, the top 25%, Dennis, I actually went week by week and highlighted the top 25. So a little bit different way to, crisscross through this. Also marked a number of weeks that the player has been in the top 25%. And that's overall, that's WRs, tight ends, running backs, everybody. So it's not within positions here. And so you can look and I don't know what this means, but since Arizona's the first team, seeing this backfield, a 2, a 4, and a 3, uh, there's not a lot of backfields that have shown this kind of strength. Dennis, certainly Connor is the main horse, but Trey Benson's right there. To me, this shows how valuable Trey Benson would be. I've got him in orange. That means I'm especially interested. Usually, when I mark that, that just means that most likely you could get him off the waivers or easily trade, or, it's not quite, the marquee player here. Uh, so I try to mark this for you and you can look at it. So again, this is something you could print off, hopefully color printer, and just follow along. And I have that. And then, so each team, Dennis, and so I like to look at your kind of one liner, but then I'm looking at the metrics and let them talk to me, right? So I'm letting the metrics tell me things. And for instance, Estime, here he is. That first week, Dennis, woke me up to like, yeah, he's worth stockpiling. I had to drop him in a few leagues. I'm actually circling back probably Sunday. I'll get a few more shares. Uh, and that's what I've been doing with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, been organizing him. Uh, Garindo, I dropped, and I end up uh, having more shares of him than I started with week one. So
Yeah.
I was happy about that. Uh, Bidet is another one that don't forget. Just when you see he was one, he had 2 weeks that were just like, wow, woke me up. So this kind of data, I think, can wake you up a little bit. And maybe these are not household names this week, but you've got to play for weeks coming. And on the flip side, look at the sadness that is Denver wide
Oh,
receivers.
yeah.
We got 2 1 1 and 3 zeros. That's sad.
Ugh.
Okay, that's sad. And looks like I repeated my thing. My bad. Uh,
So,
Wide receivers at Green Bay, a little bit better. Jalen Reed's a 4. Wow.
oh yeah.
So structure, team structure. I probably at the end of the season, I want to go back and just query a little bit about what the structure was, and maybe even for next year, how a team structures its wide receivers. This looks like Reed is the alpha, and there's a bunch that could be the beta. Okay, that's an interesting team structure. And of course, there's 2 players for the running backs, and I'm intrigued about as well. Uh, Houston, Nico Collins clearly, but look at Diggs as a 3. So
Oh
that
yeah.
structure is more 1A, 1B, even though Collins has been better than Diggs. Just if you look at the landscape, they're closer than, say, the Houston. So I mean, Denver, certainly it's a different kind of structure, and Green Bay is different. In other words, Wicks is a 2, but
Yeah.
not quite a 3. So I'm trying to think of a way to imagine team structure this way. So this is one metric. It's not the only metric. Uh,
And I do love this metric, by the way. In fact, if you go back to the Arizona one,
uh-huh.
I used this morning. I don't know what time you posted this, but I saw it on the site,
Hmm.
and I had to make some decisions because I had to move some players around,
Hmm.
and I parted ways with the Mari DiMercato because of this data for this week, because he has clearly lost his position as the
Yes.
number 2 running back to
Yes.
Trey Benson.
Yes.
And I don't see Connor Benson going anywhere. So I had to make a decision
Hmm.
on a running back to drop, and DeMarcado dropping all the way down to a 0.018,
Yeah.
and then having that
Six
point oh one six oh
yeah,
six
on
on,
week
yeah.
3. So
Ugh.
let's just say he went from very consistent to very inconsistent to very sad.
And that's
With,
losing, that's
with
a
sad,
sign. Yeah.
if you hear of an injury,
Can gobble
uh-oh,
them back up.
yeah,
Yes.
you see, this leads you back to him. But if you've got a deep bench, this is, not necessarily him, but there are players like that you want to stockpile, Dennis. And so looking at team structure and things, uh, I really love, for instance, Buffalo. James Cook's hurt. Davis and Johnson. Uh, People are saying Davis. I'm just reminded folks, Johnson had 3 weeks too. So they're 3-3. Uh, I know last week maybe the edge to Davis, but for $1, maybe squirrels some Ty Johnson this week, or you never know. If Davis is out or you can't get him, maybe he's worth a pickup. I'm
And
that
Johnson's
kind of thing.
Johnson is getting some work in the passing game. So that's the
But he's been
question there.
scoring. He
Yes.
scored 3 weeks
Yeah.
out of 5,
Yep.
Dennis.
Yep.
That's good. Yeah.
Y-
So anyway, that this is the kind where you definitely want to slip through. And I'm telling you, Grosecki's off. Had an issue week 4, kind of injured. Week 5, I'm just saying, for tight ends, giving me a 3 is a rarity. So just
Yes.
don't uh don't lose sight of him here. Njoku's coming back,
Ugh.
but I do warn you, if his injury comes back again, Akins
Akins.
is getting my attention. That kind of thing.
And especially when you look at Cleveland's wide receivers and nobody is stepping up to the plate on a
Nope.
consistent
It looks
basis.
a lot like Denver, Dennis.
It's weak sauce.
And,
So
and
they're
yeah, so my structure, folks, I like at the end of the season. It's just I get the structure concept gives me an idea about maybe even next year. What if they don't do anything and don't change? How am I expecting it to be any different? Even the next 5 weeks, am I expecting Cooper to somehow magically come back? Would I trust him 1 week out of 5? I wouldn't pay a lot for him. That kind of thing.
I love this data because it gives you another way to look at players and who the next man up is. Um,
We
classic
just
point.
talked about Mixon not coming back.
Yeah.
I like Agubawale or Nice. I know Akers, but he gets, even if Mixon comes back, I think Dare is worth maybe PPR roster spot because he gets some passing work. Damian Pierce may come back, but week 1 he was sad compared to Mixon. So I don't know what we're getting there. Confusing, confusing. Uh, I like
And
Mo
here's
Cox. Okay, go ahead.
and here's a great point, Professor. Sometimes data gives you the answers, and sometimes the data just points out a question that
Oh
you got
yeah,
to
there's
keep a
questions there.
closer eye on. And that's what this data does very well is it lets you know when the waters are muddy. And when the waters are muddy, you can't see what's going on under there. You just need to keep a little sharper eye on what is happening week to week and figure it out. Whereas some teams, it's pretty obvious who the top
Well,
dog and who the
a
secondary
question
is.
I would have would be like Green Bay. The structure is an alpha read, and notice that Tyler, the tight end is getting some play.
Yeah.
You see, so then I wonder, getting back to Schultz, losing Nico Collins puts Diggs. Who else? People are saying Dale, but does that open for Schultz? In other words, we already see Green Bay having that structure of an alpha, nobody else, and the tight end getting some play. Is it repeating in Houston? You see, so that is the question I have, the big question. My dog's even questioning my questions. Uh, so to me, that's the research I would like to do off season. In other words, something about structure. Does it tell you a little bit more about the team landscape? And that's another reason I've been thinking about Schultz, Dennis. I'm circling back to him for $1. Everybody's still kind of asleep. People are all looking at Dale right now. Schultz may be the answer. And for $1, you couldn't get Dell this week if he's out, right? Because everybody's talking about him. But you could maybe get Schultz because everybody's looking over here. And it's you lost what, $1 Fab if it doesn't work out. that that's the kind of thinking, I know it's the old zigzag concept, but that's why when I suggested for our dynasty that Schultz might be worth $1 stab, because I was thinking structure, because I've seen the structure play out in Green Bay a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the key is you have to be aware of what the tendencies are. And that will give you a clue as to what you're looking at next. So very tough to try to figure some of this stuff out, but it's like anything, Professor. This is
Mm-hmm.
just one clue
Mm-hmm.
in the puzzle.
Yeah.
And it can be a valuable clue, or it can be a clue that says next data set. And using this data
Oh,
in conjunction with my consensus rating
yeah.
rankings might give you an idea what you're doing. And then there's teams like Kansas City where whoever is out there at running back this year is going to be worth starting. Like they're going to have a solid game no matter what, because Kansas City is really leaning on that running game. And we've seen just about the same success from Kareem Hunt as we had from Isaiah Pacheco to start the season. Well, Professor,
Yep.
everybody needs to go to scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check
Check
out,
those articles out.
oh, great data indeed. But Sunday, it's time to handicap some football. And boy, oh boy, once again this week, we've got some ugly squirrels.
It's the feast famine concept that we're kind of used to here. But this week we have some squirrels that are a lot more muscular. At least we have two tough ones. Tough. Now that's bad if grandma wants to make squirrel and dumplings. She don't want the old tough squirrels. Wants the young squirrels that are tender to make that the best dumpling and the squirrel gravy. So just depends on what venue you're thinking about squirrels. But in our case, uh, squirrels are bad news with the low points here, and we got 4 games to choose from, Dennis. And we will be squirrely into my new offensive defensive metrics here that I'm introducing as well in our discussions here. So,
Well,
what game you want us to
let's take
do?
the squirreliest of the squirrel to start.
Chargers in
Let's go
Denver.
with Chargers in Denver.
Okay, so let me Chargers in Denver, and I'll post these hard figures up here on the site after we get everything else done. Here's Chargers here. There we are. 36 points this morning, spread
Uh,
of 3. Chargers 21, Denver 15. You think Sean Payton's believing this spread here? I'm curious. With these kind of situations, any result wouldn't overly surprise me. I guess the result I would think would be even lower scoring, an under. But Denver could beat them, 15-14, that kind of thing. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't, if you told me Monday, yeah, Denver beat Chargers, 15-14 or 16 to, yeah, yeah, I could see. To me, I just don't know if I believe the spread. I kind of believe the over under more than the spread on this. I'm not the DAPS, everything's screaming it's going to be not a lot of passing as much as running. Looks like an opportunity there. But the Chargers, Denver's extra tough. I was using them this week in streaming. Not they weren't my number one choice, but they were in my choices with 41 leagues. I think I'm using Denver in 3 or 4. but the overall is extra tough. Denver's been a really good defense, and they've been really tough on quarterbacks, wide receivers, and punish the kickers here. The bright spots are RBs and tight ends. Denver faces a tough Chargers, and they are also streamable. So this is a double streamable, play your defenses, forget the kickers kind of game. And RB and tight ends might have some some go here. Chargers are away, Denver's at home. If we look at the home away metrics, both teams do actually better away. Chargers are 13% more efficient uh, away than home, and Denver is 8% more efficient away at home, but they're at home. So the away home split favors the Chargers. I don't know if that uh, it's what Vegas is thinking. Denver's improving the last 3 weeks of efficiency versus the total 5. That's why I've got the word improving there. Uh, the Chargers being away, they tend to rush much more, 20% rushing, and they pass 30% less. Exactly what the defense of Denver gives them. So Chargers like to be away, Dennis, and they like to rush in away games. Uh, Denver and home likes to, they don't like to do much of anything. They're like 16% above, league below league average in
Yeah.
rushing and passing is 10%.
Ugh.
They have improved on rushing the last 3 weeks a little bit, more rushing attempts, but they are improving because they were so far down that anything doing is an improvement. So this is kind of the bleh kind of situation. Dennis, before I introduce the offense versus defense, I'll stop and let you comment on some of this stuff so far.
Yeah, I think 36 is generous. I wouldn't be surprised to see if we're in the 20s for total points. I think this is going to be the game of the week to avoid playing fantasy football players from both defenses are really strong and both coaches want to run the ball. So that shortens the game and takes away a lot of potential fantasy points. And right now, nobody is really exciting me on either team. Dobbins has been good for the Chargers to start the season, but not great the last couple of weeks. And nobody on Denver's been exciting me. So I look at this being a low scoring game. I probably would take Denver +3 at home, and I would take the under. I feel more confident about the under, though, than I do who's going to win.
Yep. So this is uh the
Wow.
the stack up here. Uh so what I do is I just simplify the DAPS on a point system. Minus is tough. Plus numbers are better. And then I look at my rankings for the week and sort that out and decide whether the team running back, quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end compared to the league this week with the matchups. Okay, it's just this week. This is within the week. Uh, and assign negative or positive points from -2 to +2. That's the range. And I made the DAPs the same scale. I look at them. And so blue is Chargers, orange is Denver. And you can see uh, the DAPs for both are a positive. So that's good. But my rankings for the RBs are a negative. So whatever you got here is balanced by the sadness that I perceive the players. So that's almost a zero. Quarterbacks are minus minus, Dennis, -2.
Oh.
That's that that's yeah, both categories. That's sad. And wide receivers are pretty sad. Tight ends are kind of break even, just like you would think. In other words, the rankings and the DAPs fall into line this week. And at the end of the season, now that I'm starting to chart this, I invented it, and now I can visually chart this because I don't know, folks, what all this, how real this is. I don't know what it means or doesn't mean, but you got to go somewhere. And Dennis and I are probably guilty. We start thinking of things in a different way and we end up doing it. Then that means weekly now, from now on, I got more work to do. Okay. So you think you get your season, Dennis, and okay, I know how much I get time. Yeah, if we stopped doing extra stuff, but now I do extra stuff. And so, but I like to be, I'm a visual learner and I really like to visualize this. So this is a situation, and I don't know what it means, but it's the DAPs and the rankings for the most part on the quarterback and wide receivers are falling in line, and they're exact opposite in the other two. So that would be a bigger way to chart. In other words, you could say yes or no, agreement or non-agreement for the position, the offense and the defense. What does that mean, for Vegas information, for winning, for spreads? I don't know, Dennis. I maybe a couple of years before we know. Don't even know if it's worth continuing. But I'm going to do it this year, and we'll get some preliminary data at the end of the season next year. Give me something to do. March and April, waiting, and I'm laughing, Dennis, because I got plenty to do in March and April. Okay, I need a 24 month year. Okay, I need to, well, they need to skip a year because I got that much data to catch up with. So, Dennis, that's the deal. And then I do have the rankings with uncertainty levels. If people are
Oh.
interested, you can check that out as well. So, Dennis, it's kind of anticlimactic in this situation. There's no more understanding that I gained by looking at this versus just kind of looking at the DApps by themselves. I guess is my feeling, but still, it allows me to get data at a bigger level. Agreement, non-agreement. What does that mean?
Well, what it means to me is this reminds me of Sunday afternoons out at Balmoral Park Racetrack when they used to open the Sunday card with a $4,000 claiming race for non-winners of two lifetime. So
Goodness.
you had the cheapest horses who had never won much, and you would have 6, 7, 8-year-old horses sometimes competing that you weren't really sure if they had four legs or not when you looked at the past performances. This is what this reminds me of. There were a few times when I would look at the forum and I would say, I don't think anybody's going to win this. I think the race is going to be won by the starters car because none of these horses are going to be walking at the finish line. That's what this game reminds me of. Stay away from Chargers and Broncos as much as you can
Okay.
for fantasy football this week. All right, one more squirrel game, and then we're going to go talk some Huskies. So let's get a little more meat on the squirrel. Let's go to Houston and New England because there is a weather concern in this game as well.
So Houston, that's number 8 here. So let me find it. Uh, da, 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 da. Okay, here we go. Houston 25-26, New England 12, -7.
Oof.
Vegas says it's not even a game, that Houston just spanks New England every which way. Drake May is playing, so Vegas thinks he gets heavily spanked, 37 and a half. Extra sad for New England. Looks like good luck trying to play them. Uh, Ramondre Stevenson is out. I know
Oh.
a few places I flipped Gibson in. I'm not happy about that, Dennis, but if I can find another replacement, for instance, if Mixon is out, there's a few places where I might have an Akers or uh, Mr. Dare, Gubawale as an option. I guess I'm a little weak on Gibson just given this scenario. So Houston, New England is below average, uh, and not overly. I'm kind of excited about New England's defense. Would be the most excitement I have, or their kicker. There may be a lot of field goals from New England, so that might be. And I guess that means Houston gives up the ball. Stroud hasn't been as, or something. Maybe the running back. Something has happened that New England might be able to take advantage, but I wouldn't play, or maybe that's the other. Maybe I'm thinking that the other way around. But anyway, I'm not. I think I'm no. I think I'm playing. Yeah. So New England, yeah, you don't want to play their defense. Houston, you do. So I'm playing Houston a lot more streamers this week. New England, their quarterback, he has an opportunity with the wide receivers. Poor Hunter Henry has to earn lots of biscuits. Gibson, good luck. And I guess Harris is the practice guy. They may call up. Dennis, you may know more about that than I do. Houston, though, is declining in efficiency last three games. They're playing away, and they actually play 17% less efficient. New England plays 8% less efficient at home, so they don't, they're not home field advantage there. Uh, Looks like Houston away uh, doesn't like to rush or pass much, so that's sad compared. So Houston's a strong play at home, Dennis. New England being at home, nothing really one way or the other. They have both been rushing less in the last 3 weeks. -7, -3. They've been declining in rushing, so they've been passing more than rushing. So they've been passing more. New England, I guess they'll have to pass. I guess, believe it or not, there may be more passing than Vegas thinks, because I'm not sure New England's going to be rushing much. Gibson's going to have to work out of the backfield, I think. So that's kind of, I'm not, I guess my overall being a squirrel game, feeling squirrely about these metrics. I'm not enthusiastic about anybody from New England, and Houston, play them if you got them on, of Diggs. I don't know about Dell, Dennis. I might gamble with Schultz. I don't know. I'm underwhelmed by Houston under these circumstances as well. And you said there's a weather issue.
Yeah, so we're going to deal with the threat of showers. That's going to be in play. But more importantly, you're going to have strong, gusty winds with a crosswind component. So winds will be gusting into the mid to upper 20s during the day tomorrow. And the wind will be cutting across the field. So it's going to be a game where the kicking game is going to be challenged. The passing games are going to be challenged. So I look at this as being probably the worst scenario for New England with the rookie quarterback. What a game to make your debut when you're going to have weather and the Houston Texans. So I look at this being an ugly game. I look at Houston winning. I look at the under to come into play here. I would not be shocked if Houston shut New England out in this game on Sunday. So, not a good game at all. On the Houston side, playing the running backs, I think they've got a nice advantage here. Um, I'm probably going to be considering in our dynasty team playing Goff instead of Stroud. I'll make that decision when I see just how bad the weather looks like it's shaping up to be. But this could be a game where uh, both teams struggle to move the ball, but Houston can move the ball enough on the ground to get it done here.
I will say that Schultz has an opportunity as I look at the DAPs are a little tough, but I think I just think Schultz has an opportunity. Hunter Henry's this says don't play him. The wide receivers, be cautious in both. Quarterback Stroud, I rate him higher than the DAP. Running backs, I rate them lower than the DAP. So it's kind of almost a break even here. It's hard to find anything positive for New England. Dennis is lean, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm not seeing a lot. I'm seeing a little bit more positive for Houston here with this. And again, folks, I'm just learning how to play this as well. This is a presentation. I don't know what it all means yet, but I do like to consider this a little bit. So, Dennis, this is what it is.
Yeah, and you think of the only positive that New England has is being taken away because Stevenson won't play. So
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
even more brutal for New England Patriots fans. All right, enough of the annoying squirrels. Let's go and take a look at a couple of the Husky games before
Yeah.
we close things
And
down.
just I will remind folks, I do have my power rankings, and New
Ooh,
England
love the power
is
rankings.
minus 16. Okay. So Houston is minus 2. So 8 uh, times worse than Houston in power this week. So by that measurement, Houston should really stomp them bad here. So what game? So I'm saying I've got the uncertainty levels and efficiency. If you want to just New England is second worst, Miami's worse. Notice Houston, Dennis. I do warn you,
Oh yeah.
Houston isn't has been less efficient recently. So I don't know the over under or whatnot, but having a low over under seems realistic to me, folks. So I'm
Yeah.
warning you about that.
And I think it could be comfortably under that as well. I would expect Houston to be in the low 20s, but like I said, I wouldn't be surprised
They
to
shut
see
out New
New
England.
England get shut out. All right, enough of those disgusting games. Let's grab another one here from a Husky
Mhm.
standpoint. How about this for a matchup? The Battle of the Baltimore Washington International Airport. How about Baltimore and Washington? This is a very interesting game.
32 to 20, minus 6 spread, 51 and a half points on every which way. Boy, Vegas doesn't respect Washington. Isn't that interesting? That spread's pretty bold there, minus 6. Baltimore gets an easy time, play them all, except one of the 3 tight ends you pick, Dennis. So you got 3 to pick from, and they all got a tough dap. So
Yeah.
just can you hear the squawking? Just to if the fantasy gods really wanted to be, I don't know if there's a fourth tight end, but that's the one that should get the touchdown this week for Baltimore to really crank everybody up on the fantasy football radio. Watch that happen, right? We had Kohler likely got a little play. Andrews is missing in action. So whoever the fourth tight end, maybe it's about time for them to fall into the end zone. Both defenses are interesting plays this week. So that I think there are maybe some turnovers here. But Baltimore should be able to pass and rush. Washington should be able to pass all day long in. I love Ertz there, Dennis. So I'm pleased about my Ertz shares. I'm a little worried about Brian Robinson going to have to earn his, and if he's a little tender with his injuries, you know, uh, I'm not sure how all that plays out. Just be aware, folks, that there's something going on there. Baltimore's at home, and they are the favorite. And at home, they like to pass and rush a little bit better than away. So they love being at home. Washington away actually loves being away, Dennis. Plus 18, plus 19 percentage rushing and passing. And they are improving. And they've been rushing more recently. So they're going to have to continue to push the rushing, I think, to balance out and keep up with Baltimore. This figures to be the fireworks kind of situation, at least as I look at the metrics here. But Washington loves away and Baltimore loves home. So it's really one of these things where the way it shapes out, Washington's not as disadvantaged as you might think, even though Vegas says they are. So it's a little bit squirrely on even though it's a Husky, it's a little squirrely on this spread here.
Yeah, I don't understand the spread. I'm interested in seeing the offensive
Yeah, so
metrics with the DAPs.
let's look. Baltimore wins the running back. Uh, both quarterbacks are favored, and both wide receiver groups are balanced out. And tight ends, Washington is favored, Baltimore is not. So it looks like quarterbacks. It looks like a break even for wide receivers. A little give Washington the edge for the tight end. Give Baltimore the edge for the rushing. So each one has an edge, and there's kind of a break even on the passing. So lots of passing, and Washington uses the tight end better and their running backs to Baltimore. So that's how I would interpret this data.
Yeah, and this is what I wanted to see because this is kind of how I expected it to play out with the metrics. This game is going to come down to two really good running quarterbacks and two teams that I think Baltimore is going to have the difference of being able to run the ball on Washington, but we've seen Washington surprising people. And I don't think Baltimore's defense is shutting everybody down this year. I think you're going to see a lot of points scored. So I like the over in this game, 51.5. And just a hunch that I think this game is going to stay a lot closer
Then
than
the
six and a
spread.
half. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Baltimore will pull it out at the end, but I think this is a field goal difference.
This
And
could be the last team with the ball wins,
it's
Dennis, or
very
has a shot.
very possible. I think it's going to be come down to one defensive stop late in the game. I see a lot of points in this game. I wouldn't be surprised to see this game in the 60s, to be honest with you. The only thing that might keep it down from the 60s is the fact that Baltimore's going to want to run all day.
I think
And I
so.
think they're going to be able to run all day on Washington. But I think Jaden Daniels is going to have a coming out party here to be able to continue to show that he's not a fluke and that he is the best, one of the best
Nice.
rookie quarterbacks to come along in quite some time. All right, let's go to one more game before we wrap things up. Then, of course, you take over for the bonus show. How about the huskiest of the husky game? How about Detroit and Dallas, which should be a very explosive game?
Well, I was surprised that Dallas, the spread is 3. I'm trying to find, here it is. So Detroit 29, Dallas 23, but 52. And I'd have to look at my secret data on spread versus over under. I don't know how this goes, Dennis. I just wonder, is this another one of these games where the last team has a shot to win? I just don't know. Detroit is away. That always worries me. Detroit loves to be at home again, Dennis. I know people are talking about dome or not. I don't know yet. Dallas is at home. Detroit should be able to run, and with Gibbs at Montgomery, that's what they do. I'm not overly concerned with Goff, below average, and the wide receivers. Sun God should have his say. Word about Laporta, Dennis. Tough, tough here. Uh, and but Detroit's had or Dallas has a tough D, so I don't know. Dallas should be able to pass CeeDee Lamb all day long. So I feel like Detroit runs, passes somewhat, but Dallas is going to have to pass. I think they're running, which unsurprising. I know Rico Dowdle has taken over from Ezekiel, but they need Henry, right? Jerry Jones, put that money out there. Too late now. And so that's how it looks to be on the DAPS. Detroit 1.50% more at home efficient, Dennis, versus away. Just folks, be aware. That's why I'm a little sketchy on this, how Vegas is. I'm not convinced. I think it's Dallas could beat them. I'm suspicious of this because of that split. Detroit away wants to run, and they don't want to pass. 50% less passing. They like to rush, and that's exactly kind of what the defense of Dallas is going to let them do. So they're going to try to run a lot more than I think. Dallas being at home, it's all about look at 38% more passing, just
Wow.
what the DAPs say. So Dallas, I think, could score. Then they could score quick. Whereas Detroit's going to have to rush a little more to score. It just depends on, can Goff get the Sun God or Jameis Williams? Can he get them in space out there to keep up with Dallas? I'm just not convinced how Vegas calls this game here at all. The overall gives the advantage to Detroit rushing. Dallas is not not a fatal flaw, but they're going to be tough trying to rush. Quarterback, it looks like Detroit is kind of a wash, but Dallas is favored with the quarterback Dak. And wide receiver, it's Dallas, and Detroit is a wash. And tight ends is kind of a wash as well. So Ferguson could get a play at Dallas. Don't forget him as well. So I think Dallas is going to be doing a lot of passing, moving down the field, lots more dynamic passing, and Detroit's going to be using the rush and be slower. And they may run out of time too, Dennis. By rushing a little more, it may cut this game short, and I think that favors Dallas.
It's going to be interesting to see which Dallas team shows up because so far this year, Dallas has played better away from home. They've lost both of their home games. They gave up 44 to the Saints and 28 to the Ravens at home. They have had trouble this year, Professor, with the better offensive teams. And I certainly think Detroit counts as one of the better offensive teams. So I do like Detroit to win this game. I think both defenses are going to give up a lot of yards and a lot of points. I think it's going to be Dak all day. CD Lamb was upset last week. Look for him to get
Get
fed
fed.
early and often. Tolbert's going to have a big game for them as well. Ferguson will probably be able to get his, even though the defense is a little tougher
I
against
got
that.
CD Lamb number one,
Yeah,
112 on a scale of 100.
yeah, he's going to have a
Tolbert's 50. He's about a 3
big,
4. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Ferguson's 99 this week. I
yeah.
see if I was doing props, I'd take touchdown, touchdown on those two. Get you a little money on your parlays there.
I think this is going to be a big scoring game. I think both teams have been able to have their defenses get tough in the red zone occasionally. So maybe you're looking at a good kicking game when you take the no weather elements in a lot of offense. Uh, Maybe we see a good kicking game as well. But I like the over on this one. And I also like Detroit, but I agree with you, Professor. This is going to be a tough game depending on which Dallas shows up. And Dallas needs this win right now. They have been just a real strange team this season. They've won the games they're supposed to win, and they've gotten beat by the teams that had good offenses. So that's why I'm concerned. Dallas's only wins against Cleveland, New York Giants, and Pittsburgh. Um, none of those teams have what I'd call a dynamic offensive attack. Detroit does. And the last two, like Kamara, beat them up earlier in the season, beat Dallas up. I see Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery
I
doing the
think
same
that could
thing.
be another doublet parlay for you.
How, yeah, how about both running backs over 100 yards in this one? Would not
Boy, I
shock
bet you
me.
could get paid on a parlay on that.
And I'm talking total yards from scrimmage, not just rushing yards, because I think
Yeah.
both guys will be in the game, in the passing game as well. So some tough games, Professor, but I do like those Husky games. Loading up on as many players from those Husky games as folks can do. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all the great articles. Check out the power rankings. Check out the efficiency and check out all of the professor's data. This snaps or points per snap is just brilliant data that nobody else is doing, folks. And you will see who are the guys you can count on each and every week. If they're making the top 25%, 4 out of 5 games this year, those are guys that you can absolutely count on in fantasy football. Check out my articles. And of course, come on back here next Wednesday for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks. Okay. Woo woo. Welcome to the back show here. Uh, you want to do one more game?
We can do whatever you want, Professor, because this is your part of the show.
Yeah, yeah.
You were the boss in this part of the show.
Yeah. I'm
I'm
wondering
just along
why.
for the
I tell you
ride.
what, since I am a New Orleans Saints fan, I
Ooh.
want to hear your take on this squirrely 41 and a half team here. So I'm sad New Orleans, from last week. That was our Super Bowl. We got Spencer Rattler. Every time I hear that, who? And then, Rattler sounds like a name of like some type of animal, right? I mean, not like a snake, but like a dog or something. Or doesn't mean he's going to be a dog. But I don't know anything, Dennis. I know nothing about this guy, so I knew you'd have some insights there. Vegas thinks that the Saints get spanked 3.5 points, 41. That's sad. I need my Saints, this Rattler kid, I don't know, they need to juice him or whatever vitamins or I used my swamp magic for you. What did I use my swamp magic for you Thursday? What did you
Oh,
need? You
oh,
needed
I
something.
needed a score from somebody, and you got it to me.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I don't know if the voodoo folks down there on Bourbon Street can work a who dat magic sauce here. Tampa Bay is playing at the home dome, so New Orleans does have that going for them. And Tampa Bay should be able to rush. New Orleans has been tough on the quarterbacks, but been easy on the tight ends. So Otten might find some goodness here. And kickers and these are early. New Orleans should have an opportunity passing. So if this Rattler kid can pass, there's this data would say that uh, you know Olave and Rashid should be able to bounce back from last week, and Kamara probably should could get fed in the backfield, rushing below average. I mean, Kamara can do that until they run the tread off his tires. That's what I'm scared of. They just keep using him and using him. So, folks, waivers, Jamal Williams better have, and Miller coming off IR worth $1. I'd stockpile. I just don't know. I think Kamara's going to miss some games. I just don't know when it's coming. But he's nursing some injuries. I just don't know how long he can keep it going. And if this Rattler kid has a bad game, Kamara could really be in trouble. I'm just concerned that the kid's going to get Kamara hurt or something. So anyway, I'm bad vibes here for my best man Kamara here, and I don't want that to happen, but I scared. That's what we say down here. We're not scared. We're scared, and I'm scared for Kamara here. And I've got Williams everywhere I can have him, even when I don't have Kamara. I've got Williams. I've been stockpiling him when he's been available, and I've been, now's the time before people think too long and hard. Having, I mean, it's too late for this week, but you never know. I don't know health wise. I just got concerns, okay, and I don't want to jinx Kamara. Tampa Bay away, they love uh, to rush compared to the Pat. Look, 71% less efficiency or passing attempts away. And
Wow.
that's what the defense of New Orleans is tough against the pass. So this almost seems like a rushing, and that cuts the time down for Tampa Bay. New Orleans at home loves to rush. They want Kamara. They hadn't been passing too well. And so the Daps say pass, but they haven't been passing, and they're declining team by efficiency in the last 3 weeks because they did so well the first two games. So I'm catching that metric. So they're going to have to do what they haven't been doing given the Daps, and I don't think they can do it. And I think Vegas is reading that as well. It looks to me like I'm not sure that 41 is a real number. It looks like it's going to be lower. If Tampa Bay is boss on the rushing, Dennis, then that could shorten this game. And see, Tampa's got advantages. New Orleans is kind of break even on the rushing. So, worried about Kamara and the quarterbacks. The DAPs favor the quarterback, but the ranking, it's exact opposite here. And it looks like New Orleans is going to have to pass. So this Rattler kid maybe shakes it up. Maybe it's a miracle at the home dome. And it would be, if it's a miracle, it'd be not through Kamara, it'd be through Rattler passing. So this could be an all or none kind of game for Olave and Rashid. This could be crazy, Dennis. I wouldn't play any of the tight ends
No.
for New Orleans. I know that's the words of wisdom, right? Young quarterbacks like their tight ends, but is it Moreau? Is it Juan?
Nah.
Who is it? They've
Yeah.
been no. I don't know who to use. I like Otten, and I will play him uh, for some of my tight ends because it's been lean this year in tight ends. So I'm still left with lots of uncertainty about Rattler, and I think my ranking Rattler, I didn't even rank him, Dennis. That's how bad I think. So I think Olave's a 3, Rashid's a 4 this week. I'm really down on the passing, even though they have that. It's all in Kamara's hand at 96. He's doing it. And for Tampa Bay, Bucky Irwin, because White is doubtful.
Yep.
So if White's out, Bucky's a low end RB1 this week, in my opinion. Play him all day long, Dennis. Otten, play if you need a streaming tight end. Goodwin should have a game, and Evans. Anyway, you can't stop those. I think the rushing with Bucky is going to open up the passing later. And then I think they'll seal the deal with Irvin again. So they'll hit them hard with Bucky, pass in the second, early in the second, third quarter, second quarter, then shut the door with Bucky in the fourth quarter. That's kind of how I see it. So I don't know if they get above that 41, Dennis.
No, I think it's going to be a low scoring game. And here's what I'm looking at is both teams, I think, especially New Orleans, will be really tough on Tampa in the red zone. They'll get tough when they have to. And I think that I'd love to be playing the Tampa kicker this week. Rattler is such an unknown. So the kid's got a major league arm. Like he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's got all the back class in the world. In college, he was very erratic. He put up a ton of yards, but he also turned the ball over at times. So, which Spencer Rattler are you going to get? Is he ready for prime time? I don't know. I look at this as live arm, and rookie quarterback's best friend is really the check down to the running back. So Kamara is a play all day. Olave and Shaheed have been really up and down this year. Shaheed's been actually a little bit better if you look at the overall statistics. You look at my consensus ratings, and Shaheed is actually one spot ahead of Olave. That's how weak Olave has played this year because he's had 2 really bad games and then he's had 3 really good games. So it's a mess. It's just a matter of, can New Orleans overcome what should be some turnovers by their quarterback? And I like the under on this. I'm going to surprise you, Professor. I think New Orleans is going to pull off the upset.
Oh my God.
You know how I said that Drake May is in the absolute worst situation, going up against a fairly tough defense against quarterbacks in the rain, in the wind for his debut. Rattler getting to play inside against the Tampa Bay team that occasionally does give up. a lot of yards. I think you got a chance. And I think New Orleans' only weakness, if you look against Tampa's strength, is the running game, but Kamara trumps that. Kamara's good enough to overcome a tougher defensive matchup. And it's not that tough of a defensive matchup, but I think New Orleans wins in a low scoring game. I think both teams will be in the teens. I think the kickers will both be a big key part of this. If they can hit from long range, that'll probably just be that little extra that they need. I think New Orleans is good, ripe for the upset here against Tampa. And I think the big key is, can New Orleans get Baker Mayfield to turn the ball over? If they can do that, if they can force turnovers and they can get away from the defensive penalties that have been plaguing them, they've given up some big yardage on pass interference. Adebo has been the biggest culprit for New Orleans this year. If they can kind of play right up to the whistle and not get flagged for defensive interference, I like New Orleans' chances of pulling this off. I think Rattler, I wouldn't be surprised to see that 2 touchdown, 2 interception, and a fumble lost type of a line for Spencer Rattler, where he does a lot of good things and he does a lot of bad things all in the same game.
I will say the spread 3.5 with this new kid. I think Vegas is not, is sympathetic to New Orleans and thinks. In other words, I would think the spread would be 6 points if they were very worried about Rattler. I think they're just average worried about him, I guess is how I would see. So
And
I am encouraged by the low spread.
The betting public
Mm-hmm.
is really surprising me on this one, because I thought I was being so bold by picking a New Orleans upset.
Yeah.
74% of the
Wow.
money line money is going to New Orleans at a plus 162.
Wow.
55% are taking the 3.5 points. And here's the one that surprises me. Here's where I think the consensus is wrong. 77% are on the over on this. And that surprises me. I think this is going to be a low scoring game. I think there's going to be a lot of turnovers. I think the defenses are going to come up strong. And I'm not just saying this to be nice, Professor, because I'm never nice when it comes to your Saints.
No.
I like the Saints to pull off the upset.
Nice. Okay. Well, then I guess we can end this after the show with a positive note. I'm just worried about, Kamara. I'm just stockpile those Williams and Miller shares for $1 while everybody's asleep. Do your best work while everybody's looking elsewhere. Schultz at Houston for $1. Find the buck plays. Now's the time to do it. Saturday night, find them, do them, negotiate them, whatever you need to do, and stockpile some of these running backs that have a shot to ascend to help you win in the playoffs. It's coming, Dennis. So maybe that's the article you need to do. Who do we need to have? The next man up, speculate for us, and get some speculation going there. Like this New England, you said the guy named Harris, right? Wasn't there a practice guy?
Kevin Harris off the practice squad because Jamichael Hasty works on special teams. So that's why he's been active every week.
Right.
Do I think Kevin Harris is a good play this week? No. But
for $1 in a space, yeah.
For the future, I think there's a possibility that if you're missing Stevenson for any length of time, that Kevin Harris could be the guy to step up and take over that role. Just like with New Orleans, if I can't get Kendra Miller, I've scrolled away a few shares of Jordan Mims because he's the next man up. if
Mhm.
something happens to either of those guys. So,
Okay.
yeah, mate, you're right, Professor. It's time for another next man up article. I
Yeah.
did one in the preseason. Maybe it's
Yes, you
time for
did.
one here.
Yeah, I would, it would save me time bugging you. So I'm asking for me. I don't know about anybody else, but it would, I would just like in my deep fills, in my contingency players, it'd be nice to throw. I already threw a Harris share or two in. Maybe not my top, but he's in there, on some that, that kind of thing.
And that's a wait and see play. That's a grab a guy, see what he does. And if he doesn't do anything, if he doesn't even get moved up to the main roster,
Yeah.
then next week
You,
that's a
you,
roster
you mean
space
like
that you
my
use.
my my Juju shares that I've been stockpiling? I think I have what about 20
those
leagues
are
out of 40
those are those paid off.
for a buck,
Yeah.
Dennis. I've been squirreling and Estimate and Thielen and some of these other ones. I'm starting to squirrel away, folks. Some of these other ones just for, while everybody's asleep and start thinking, you've got to start thinking ahead on these kind of things. And even Saturday night, I'm looking at next week's lineups, bye weeks and maybe pick up, if I need an emergency quarterback. I know Dak's out week 7, so I've got to check my, my quarterbacks. I may have to trade some out or something. Now's the time where everybody's focused on week 6. What's going on coming up week 7? I would urge y'all to do that as well. So
And,
don't be asleep at the wheel, I guess.
and if your lineups are set for this week and you've
Yeah.
got an extra roster spot,
Hmm.
go fishing for some of those guys that people dropped because they're on their bye week
Oh,
and
yes. Yeah.
grab those guys because they will have an impact going forward. The other strategy I like, if I'm really thin at quarterback and maybe I'm rolling the dice because I only have my one quarterback in a one quarterback league, once I'm past the bye week for that team, I always, always, always roster the backup. Nothing else is available on waivers. No other starters are available.
So
I
who's the
grab
backup
that
for
backup.
Hertz? Since he just,
Hurts,
yeah.
yeah, that's that's the kind of strategy that I'm talking about. And
Yeah, I don't even know
right
who it is.
right now, I mean it you look at it, you don't get too excited, folks, when you look at who the backup is, because the backup to Mr. Jalen Hurts is Kenny Pickett. And we saw what Kenny Pickett can do and can't do last year.
Ooh, that's lean,
It's
Dennis.
lean,
That's lean.
but it's better than having a zero at the position.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
why again, if you got other starters that are available, that's the preferred move.
Yeah.
But if there's no starters available, for instance, on a
If
couple of my
Goff,
team,
what about Goff coming off his bye? Or
yeah,
is it
that's
Herbert? So those are the ones to think about, right?
correct. So with Detroit, it's again not a great glorious play, but
Yeah.
it's Hendon Hooker is the backup. So
Ooh, that is
yeah,
lean.
it's lean, but again, it's what would you prefer to go into the lineup with nobody or to go into the matchup with a live body who can get you maybe 10 points?
Especially in Superflex.
Superflex especially, but what I'm talking about are deeper leagues
Yeah, with the
where
one quarterback.
no
Yeah.
quarterbacks are available.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that I'm backing up Mahomes with Carson Wentz, for instance, in a few leagues. That doesn't mean that if somebody tries to get cute and puts a Daniel Jones onto waivers or whatever, I'm grabbing any starter.
Yeah.
I'm grabbing
What
Connell
about
if I
Russell
need.
Wilson?
Russell
Should we
Wilson,
grab
I
him?
would squirrel Russell Wilson away because there's a possibility that he would be a starter again. You'd only if you've got a roster spot that you're not using.
Yeah.
But yes, he's another classic example of a guy that I wouldn't hesitate to squirrel away. if I need that extra guy, Jameis Winston with Cleveland's another guy that I would speculate might have a starting role down the line, and same with Mason Rudolph with Tennessee. Those
Okay.
guys could lose their jobs. Um, the
Willis
others
and
are
yeah,
injury,
yeah.
plays, but you know, if you have to get imaginative sometimes at quarterback, I would rather have a starter than no starter. This week, I was sitting pretty with Mahomes on bye with one of my dynasty leagues, one quarterback. I was sitting, I thought, pretty because I had Horner from New Orleans, their backup, and I also had Mason Rudolph, the backup with Tennessee. Um, my other backup was Huntley, so he's on a bye along with Mahomes. But I had two guys that had the shot at being starters. Neither of them will be a starter.
Yep.
So this week I'll probably lose my matchup. But um, you know, in once I get past this week, I'll be picking up Carson Wentz in that league because there's nothing available. It's a 14 team league and everybody squirrels away quarterbacks. It's a little deeper benches. So, you get caught sometimes with guys that are not going to be starters. And that's
So
what
why
happens.
can you does waivers run now?
Yeah, but there's nothing available,
But what I'm
you
saying
know.
is if you know you're going to get a zero, go ahead and get Wentz this week.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing that, and I probably will tomorrow
Mhm.
because it's open free
Ah,
agency, so I don't have to bid. And so what I'll probably do is if both uh, Will Levis is ready to go, they don't, I'll probably go ahead and the other possibility though is that Levis could leave in the middle of the game and then
yeah.
I could get some points. So right now I've got Mason Rudolph in that spot. I've got Jameis Winston sitting there. Jake Hayner, it will probably be discarded tomorrow um, for Carson Wentz. And that way I know I've got the backup to Mahomes for down the road. The crazy thing is, Professor, I had a league last week where it was super flex. I didn't play a quarterback. I lost by 1.7 points.
Sad.
So came very close. In fact, that last touchdown on Monday night was the one that beat me. Otherwise, I was going to beat a guy without a quarterback. In another league, that's kind of an experimental league among folks from the Expo from 2 years ago that I met. Um, we picked two teams this year, and we got all of the players on those two teams. I picked the Eagles and the Colts. One of the reasons I picked the Colts is because they had an easy matchup when the Eagles were on bye. And I got cute. I thought, well, maybe I got a shot. I won that matchup playing against the best of two teams. So you got to get a little inventive sometimes in some of these wacky leagues and some of these deep leagues. And that's my advice is if you're in a deep league and there's no other quarterbacks available, make sure you grab the backup to your starter so you make sure
Okay.
you at least have a live body when it comes to playoff time.
Thank you, oh wise one. Dennis, you're my man. I love your icon. You look like you're crazy. You have OD'd on Red Bull. There you are.
That does look like me after a couple of espresso
Yeah. And
coffees.
notice in the back, KC, you see, that's another reason I picked this. You probably hadn't even noticed. Can you see on the chalkboard in the back?
Oh, wow.
You see, KC?
You
It's
got
like
it.
all these weird metrics.
You're taking good care of me there.
So there you go. That's what I said. There's Dennis. He's been ciphering Mahomes, and there he is. But apparently he's declining at the end of the season, I guess.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know. Yeah. Anyway, okay, we are done with after the show and another fun time, Dennis. So I'm gonna
Woohoo.
stop recording now. Boo boo.